Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully, we're having an all right middle of the week out there. Got a big time update here for you on what we're seeing in a couple different aspects of the weather out there, including the threat of some tropical trouble to kind of end out hurricane season here towards the start of November. That combined with the potential of a more stormy pattern on the way about a week from now onward has definitely, a lot on the table that we do need to discuss. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll update you every time I post a video with the latest model guidance and kind of a breakdown of that guidance and how it may affect you. And then also go ahead and like the video, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and consider sharing with somebody that you think might find the video interesting or helpful. Also, if you have any comments, feel free to ask me, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments, and I'll definitely try my best to get around to answering those. As soon as I can. I am a busy person though. I am, in college getting a degree in meteorology, so that definitely takes up a lot of time. But definitely I do try my best to answer all those, and I do read them all, no matter what. Okay, with that said, let's go and dive on into things because, again, a good bit to discuss today, and I don't want to leave you hanging. So we're going to start with the tropics. And this really does feel like the hurricane season that keeps on giving. We started the season crazy with Beryl, and then we had kind of a pretty long break there with Debbie sprinkled in before things really picked up with Helene, Milton, and Francine that happened kind of later on in the year. So it's kind of dependent where you live, as most things do with the weather, but definitely a hurricane season to remember, and we may not be done yet. Now, you're probably looking here at the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico saying, Gerald, you're crazy. What are you talking about? There's nothing down here. Well, you're right. There is nothing down here right now. But one of the beauties of meteorology is we can oftentimes predict what's going to happen, or at least get a general idea of what's going to happen in a place that nothing is happening currently. And that's exactly what we think is on the horizon here for the Caribbean. Now, currently, we do have the remnants of what was Oscar. Oscar now becoming a mid-latitude cyclone here, so not necessarily weaker. It's just no longer tropical. And you folks up into eastern Canada will need to monitor this, and we will discuss that briefly. But other than that, I mean, there's barely a cloud in the sky over the Gulf or the Caribbean currently, which is the way we like it. But again, unfortunately, I am expecting that to change in about 7 to 10 days or so. Now, latest from the National Hurricane Center, still nothing expected in the next 7 days, and I expect that from them, again, because there is nothing likely to form in the 7-day time frame. Now, once we get past 7 days, again, I think there are higher chances, and they agree, and I'll show you why in a second. Again, it's not just me saying that we have a chance for a storm in the Caribbean, trust me. But again, next 7 days, all clear. It's after that we need to kind of keep our eyes on the radar here. Now, let's very quickly, before we talk about tropical trouble in the Caribbean, let's talk about what's left of Oscar and how that could impact some people up here into Canada. So this is Thursday afternoon, so as early as tomorrow afternoon, this big blob of kind of mess you see down here. This is Oscar, again, as a remnant low. And how do we know it's a remnant low? Well, we have troughing in the isobars here, which tells me we have fronts with the storm, which means it is no longer purely tropical. Tropical systems have basically perfect circles for isobars around them. Mid-latitude cyclones are a lot more kind of unique in the isobar pattern that they have, and then kind of the isotherm contours as well, and a couple other things. But anyway, we move this ahead into time. Thursday afternoon, the shield of rain does move up into portions of eastern Canada, clipping the extreme eastern section of Nova Scotia, but hitting Newfoundland pretty good here with some heavy rainfall Thursday evening here into the overnight on Friday, and a pretty good low pressure system sitting probably around 990 millibars and strengthening upon approach here. So definitely a lot of rain and some windy conditions overnight Thursday, throughout the day Friday through Newfoundland, especially, or maybe really only the eastern half of the island here. You'll notice that rain moving through and then kind of clearing out by the time we get into our Saturday afternoon. And then another storm system forms behind that one. But for Oscar, again, really going to just be a wind and rain event here, I think, from Thursday night through potentially as late as Saturday morning, but probably really clearing out by that point in time. So I forgot to talk about that in yesterday's video, and I didn't want to gloss over it 2 days in a row, and I had a comment about it. So yeah. Okay, so the tropics. Well, what's on the horizon here? Like I said, it's not just Gerald, the junior in college, that is telling you that there's going to potentially be something in the Caribbean. And again, I want to use the word potentially because my forecast currently is not for some major hurricane to absolutely impact. Now, I will say there is very much a possibility we do get a hurricane, potentially even a major hurricane in the Caribbean by the start of November. But right now, again, it's just too far to really know, and we're going to need some time to get some more model data and things like that. But the Climate Prediction Center does agree that in that 2-week time frame, the very end of October through the first week of November, we do have a heightened threat here of tropical cyclone development, whether that's a depression, a storm, or a hurricane. It could be any of them there into portions of the Western Caribbean, kind of from Central America up through Jamaica and into the southern coastline of Cuba. And should something develop here, where will it go? Well, that's its own kind of nightmare to forecast as well. Some kind of models do something like this. Some models kind of pull it up like this. So there are a lot of possibilities, but it is not unprecedented to get a storm down here this late in the year. I can name a couple: Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Sandy, both very late October storm systems. We've even had early November hurricanes. So again, and when it normally happens, it does happen here in the Caribbean. So definitely something to kind of keep, an eye on. And there is a very real possibility that we do get a storm out of this. Now, with that said, let's take a look at some model guidance, and we'll start with the GFS. The GFS has easily been the most excited about the potential for tropical development, as it normally is in the long range. So maybe a little bit of a red flag there. However, I will say the GFS has been very consistent, and so far this year, when it has been consistent, with storm development, it is normally done pretty good. So we'll move this head at a time. Here we go. This is basically a week to 8 days from now. This is Thursday. Let me say that again. This is Wednesday night, October 30th, Eastern time at least. Now, if you're in Greenwich, England, this is the midnight hour on Thursday, October 31st. But here for us in the East, again, this is getting into next Wednesday evening. And you'll notice this big broad area of low pressure firing up some thunderstorm activity and even getting some more defined areas of low pressure here that try to kind of fight for dominance in this big broad gyre. Now, eventually this does close into a low and into a storm system by Halloween itself. So by the final day of October, the GFS does have a tropical storm developing here right around Jamaica, and then kind of just meandering around a little bit, kind of between Jamaica, Hispaniola, and Cuba as a tropical storm. And then once we get towards the 10-day time frame, gets this out of the Caribbean, gets it up near the Bahamas, and then, from there on out, it's really speculation on what would happen. But one thing I do want you to notice is look at how massive this general isobar field is. I mean, we've got closed isobars stretching from, let's see here, from basically Tampa Bay all the way back to, nearly Puerto Rico or Hispaniola. So this is quite the gyre. It's a big kind of spinning area of activity. So I think even if we don't get a storm to form, we're going to get some sort of impactful weather, likely over the islands and potentially into Florida here by the time we end October and start November. So either way, that's something we need to watch. And just to say I will show you after the fact, this does get pulled up near Florida in that 10 to 12 day time frame. But again, anything past 10 days is really just speculation. And I'll show you another model, the European model. I'm going to breeze on through this. Same general idea. A lot of thunderstorm activity, a general gyre into the Caribbean. You can even see that at the same time frame. This is Halloween morning, and we've got something trying to develop down here on the European model as well. It's just not nearly as well defined, and the Europeans not nearly as excited about its chances of development as the GFS model was. So I figured I would show you that one as well. I will also show you the Euro AI model, which has done relatively good. This is its first year of existence ever since the big AI craze. And it's done pretty good, actually, all things considered, with some storm systems. And for this one, it's a little bit closer to the GFS, arguably. Again, this is about 10 days out from now. You'll notice this big spin right near Jamaica, much like the GFS showed. And then eventually once we get past 10 days, does develop this into a storm system that's a little bit more defined, and then kind of pulls some of it up towards the southeast, leaves some of it in the Caribbean, and kind of creates a mess. But, it does develop something. And I will mention, this is the kind of storm system I think that if it does get pulled north, it'll likely go from tropical to post-tropical cyclone. So kind of like what Oscar did. Oscar was a hurricane a couple of days ago. Now it's got fronts and all that. This storm system would probably be similar, but it's such a big area of spin. We could get an impactful storm out of it, even if it doesn't have complete hurricane or tropical characteristics by the end of its life cycle. All right, so GFS ensembles through the next 10 days, and you'll notice, a lot of members do develop something here into the Caribbean. Now, where it goes, most of them pull it north, generally speaking, and then after that, it gets kind of crazy on what happens. Some pull it this way towards Florida, some kind of loop around a little bit, but you get the idea. Something forms into the Caribbean, and 10 days from now, it kind of gets pulled north, and I'll even move this out a little bit further ahead into time. This is, getting out there towards 300 hours, but just to show you, it's a mess of spaghetti on your screen. So, the ingredients are there for a storm to form. I think that is pretty well set in stone. Just whether it does form and where it goes will be the bigger question that we kind of have to answer. If we take a look at the European ensemble members, not nearly as excited about the chance of development here. Again, this goes 10 days out. So pretty different depictions on both models, but both of them are tools that we're going to use here to forecast this. But currently, right now, I do think that we're going to get something to form in the Caribbean. How strong that gets, how tropical is that? How post-tropical is that by the time it gets near people? We will see. But definitely, I would keep an eye on it here in that 7 to 10 day range as we end October and start the month of November. All right, so what's going on back home currently, and then we'll talk about the long range. Well, right now we do have a bit of a cold front actually swinging on through the extreme northern part of the country, so we do have some cloud cover firing up here into the Midwest and into the Great Lakes region. Also, another trough and another storm system going to get going out west, so kind of a 1-2 punch this week. Actually, let me just kind of draw it in a little bit more of a understandable way. So again, kind of a 1-2 punch. This is storm 1, this is storm 2, both of which are going to bring some sort of rainfall and a shot of cold air behind them. And it'll kind of be nice to get that shot of cold air because it has been well above average in the temperature department recently. And I mean, especially folks up into the Midwest and the Northeast and the Great Lakes region, it has been kind of crazy warm for the end of October. All right, current conditions out there. Rainfall-wise, the only rain we're seeing in the United States is, again, through Iowa and Nebraska, and then also back towards the Pacific Northwest here. We are seeing some, pretty good rainfall up into Ontario and Quebec. So you folks watching from Eastern Canada, definitely getting in on some pretty good rain. Rain that I'm sure a lot of us in the United States would like to borrow from you. And because of that lack of rain, we do have a fire weather risk into portions of the Northeast today. In fact, I think Connecticut has a bit of a wildfire problem ongoing currently with the red flag warnings through the entire state and special weather statements all the way up from Vermont all the way down the I-95 corridor towards Philly and into Dover, Delaware, due to that fire hazard risk. Again, it has been very dry. We've gone weeks without rain for a lot of folks here into portions of the United States. And unfortunately, that's likely going to continue a bit longer in the east, but there is signs of relief on the horizon. We'll talk about that, but not quite for everybody. All right, so the week ahead, kind of what we're watching, again, it's a 1-2 punch on the cold front department, and then next week things get really active. So here's our first trough that's going to bring a cold front, and I keep changing the size of this pen, sorry. Here's our first trough, here's our second trough. Both of these are going to move eastbound and bring some shots of cooler, drier air and just a little bit of precipitation. And I'll move this ahead through this week into the weekend. Let me refresh the page, actually. It's working a little slow here. So again, moving this ahead into time, there's that first one working through the Northeast, and then the second one, I'll mention that first one working through really right now into tomorrow. And then that second trough moves again to the Northeast again by this coming weekend and brings probably a deeper shot of cold air, I think. And then after that, the stage is set for a more active pattern to start next week, which we will discuss. All right, starting out west, this is the second storm system, but we're going to start west to east here. So here we go. This afternoon into this evening, kind of a band of some showers and snow showers, depending on your elevation, through western Montana into portions of Idaho and eastern Oregon, seeing that work on through this afternoon. And here's our low pressure beginning to form and deepen at the surface. Then as we get through this afternoon and evening, that kind of ejects into the plains, again bringing some showers with it into the Dakotas and Minnesota. This is Thursday afternoon, so tomorrow the 24th. And then that kind of works east out of frame and kind of moves into the eastern half of the forecast. But other than that, I mean, nothing's happening out west, at least in the near term. Now, more active weather out here by next week, I think, is more likely. But right now, things remain pretty calm out here towards the western United States. Now, in the east, things are a little bit more active. So this afternoon, again, a front swinging on through the northeast. That's one of the reasons we have that fire risk. Here is that front, and you'll notice the front extends pretty far south, but the precipitation is kind of caught to the north. So kind of in this middle zone, we're going to get the wind from the front and the dry air from the front, but we're not really going to get the moisture from it. And that's, again, one of those reasons why wildfires are a concern this afternoon into this region. And I'll move this ahead into time. You'll notice really slim pickings here in the rain department. A couple showers maybe from northern Pennsylvania, kind of Scranton northbound overnight tonight and into tomorrow. But that's really all the precipitation we get out of that front before a cool high pressure works in behind it. And does bring a little bit of relief here in the temperature department. But as that's happening, again, out west, our second shot of cold air, our next round of active weather kind of working in there through Minnesota tomorrow afternoon. And moving that on into Thursday evening into Wednesday, a pretty good, a bit of rain, honestly, through portions of the UP of Michigan, into Wisconsin, back down through Iowa, northern Illinois, and then this gets us overnight Thursday into Friday. And I mean, if anyone's lucking out on rain right now, it's this region. It's Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and kind of the Dakotas and Nebraska have been the only ones to really get significant rainfall out of the Rockies over the past couple of days. And the winners are going to keep winning later this week as that works on through. Now, again, this is Friday morning. You'll notice that rain swinging on through with that front. This gets us into Friday afternoon, overnight Friday, and again, same old story. The precipitation dries up as it gets east towards the Appalachia chain. And again, maybe a couple showers in the northeast, I think Friday night into Saturday. But then behind that, cool high pressure works in, and we will need to watch. There is the slight potential here that this kind of backdoor cold front with this high pressure could spark up a couple of showers in the Carolinas, maybe this weekend. And we're going to have to hope for it because, again, most folks in the Carolinas haven't gotten rain of any kind since Hurricane Helene, which was almost a month ago at this point. So, it's been a while. So we'll have to hope that that backdoor cold front can produce just enough lift, and you'll see some of that down here into the Carolinas and Georgia early next week as some cold air damming sets up shop and we get some cooler, drier air to work on into the eastern half of the country, specifically east of the Appalachia chain. All right, so temperatures this week, again, hot today. This is today. Tomorrow, hot again. Cools down a little bit in the northeast, but remains hot basically everywhere else. And I say hot, I mean, it's not hot. I mean, for some folks it is. I mean, when we're running 20, 30 degrees above average in the plains, yeah, it probably is hot, even if it is the end of October. But you'll notice, again, another slight cool down on the way this weekend. This is Sunday afternoon. You'll notice some of that cold air damming setting up shop, cooler than average into eastern Canada and back down the spine of the Appalachia chain as that CAD sets up. But to the west, I mean, boy, oh boy, look at this massive ridge setting up shop by the weekend, well above average again into the Rockies and into the Great Plains. And that's going to set up the stage for the potential of a bigger storm system next week. And that's what we're going to talk about now here. Is kind of what's on the horizon. So same time frame that I just showed you. This is next Sunday, Sunday afternoon. Here's the temperatures for next Sunday afternoon. Here's the heights for next Sunday afternoon, and you kind of see how they're related. Big time ridge right where we're seeing those big temperatures. Again, the atmosphere is expanding. That's why the heights are taller. Again, heat expands, cold air is much more dense. So just kind of to correlate that here for you. Again, so a lot of orange showing up, but what happens as that orange shows up, it does move east. Brings those warmer temperatures with it, but we do get a big trough to dump out west. So this will bring a lot of cool air, the blue being cold air, the kind of red and orange colors being warmer air. And what happens is we get kind of this battleground zone between, and with some diffluence here and likely a bit of a jet streak to form here, we're going to see enough divergence aloft that low pressure is likely to form at the surface at some point early next week. Probably a couple of times. We're probably going to get a couple areas of low pressure, a couple of storms to fire up and kind of swing on through here as this trough maintains itself out west, tries to work east a little bit, and then is reinforced by another big trough in the long run in about 10 or so days from now. So what could this look like on radar? Well, this is next Monday afternoon. You'll notice still not a lot happening, but we get into Tuesday, and we do get one storm system to form here and kind of work on out of the Rockies through the plains. That could bring some wintry weather through the Rockies, maybe a little bit of wintry weather on the north side, even into the Great Plains, but right now looks more like rain. Could also bring some severe weather on the south side. And again, I think that's just one of a couple storm systems next week. Here's another one. This one looks much more potent by the middle of next week. Again, this one probably more likely to bring some severe weather. But what I will say is this trough is relatively positively tilted. So what do I mean by that? Well, I go back right into this time frame. The general orientation here of the trough is again, you'll kind of notice it's tilted this way. So that is a sign of not a weaker trough per se, but a trough that isn't necessarily using its entire potential to kind of help storm systems in the upper levels. Again, can definitely form storm systems, but you'll notice we're getting these low pressure values more around 1,000 millibars compared to a big time storm that might be 980, 970 millibars. So again, definitely favorable for cyclogenesis, but probably not favorable enough to create some kind of massive storm system that's going to bring huge blizzard conditions and a huge severe weather outbreak. But these more temperate, mild kind of strength storms definitely can do the job. They can bring severe weather and can bring some precipitation of some sort. Probably a little less likely to get winter precipitation outside of the higher terrains, just due to that lack of stronger cold air advection due to that positively tilted trough. But again, still expecting a stormy pattern next week. And you can see that on the rainfall map. This is now through next Monday. So this is just from the two fronts this week. Again, the only rain we're really seeing into this Midwest Great Lake region. But as we move this further ahead into time, through next week, watch the precipitation kind of blossom into the central part of the country through that 7 to 10 day time frame, from Kansas, Missouri, down to Oklahoma, Texas, even into Arkansas. Again, a sign that those storm systems are going to try to work on through and bring some more active weather. But unfortunately, with that trough getting stuck out west in that ridge in the east, it's going to be a warm Halloween, folks, here east of the Rockies. Basically, no doubt about it. In fact, they're going with a 100% chance that you're going to be above normal in the temperature department 6 to 10 days out from now, through the Mississippi River Valley, up through the Ohio River Valley. But yeah, I mean, again, if you live east of the Rockies, probably not the picturesque, cool, chilly Halloween that you might have been hoping for. But out west, definitely into California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, where that trough is dumping, it's going to be cooler than average for sure. Probably some high elevation snowfall out there as well to look forward to. And unfortunately, slash kind of fortunately, depending on who you are in the temperature department, or excuse me, the rainfall department rather, we are going to see an uptick in rain through the plains, even down probably into the southern plains. So definitely some good news there. But for those of us in the east, I mean, still dry 6 to 10 days from now into the northeast, down into the mid-Atlantic. I mean, it's getting kind of crazy here, how long we've gone without rain. And hopefully we can make up for it soon. And hopefully these troughs can kind of start working further east past the Mississippi. But right now, all the active weather looks to stay into the plains. Now, I will mention, if we do get something tropical out of the Caribbean that pulls north up into this region, which, excuse me, is not out of the question 10 to 15 days from now, that could definitely help put a dent in the rain, and something's going to have to eventually. But it feels like that's the only way we've gotten rain this year is from tropical systems. Alrighty, folks, well, that's all I got for you on this Wednesday. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Like the video, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and consider sharing with somebody that you think might find it interesting. All right, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.